Hey, I'm Eric Poole, editor of Guns and Ammo magazine, here with Jim Tarr, handgun editor for Guns and Ammo, and Gaines Davis. Now, Gaines, you're an engineer. What is your official title with SDS Arms?
Director of Engineering.
Well, awesome. I probably should have guessed that. We're getting together here today to talk about an article that I wrote called Turkish Delight in the August issue of Guns and Ammo magazine for 2025. Turkish Delight was a very long article for us. It's 10 pages. That is a lot of editorial space. But it was necessary because it talks to the fact that Gaines, you and I went to Turkey in February 2025, and we visited several mass producers of the world's most affordable imported firearms. And that's how I described it. So in that, the first stop was we visited Merzoff in Istanbul. And what an incredible city. We didn't get to see much of Istanbul to start, but we went right to work almost as quickly as we got there. And Merzoff is interesting because, they have a history of making military type firearms. I mean, we saw like a 50 caliber machine gun, for example, there. But what Americans love about it is the Mac 5 series. And that's where Jim Tarr comes in, because I know that's personally one of your favorites. Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with Merzoff and what those employees are like and the attitude towards development and how they work with an American partner like SDS Arms?
Well, you've got to realize they're going from customers in the militaries, to, tenders and all that around the world to commercial sales. So military standards are more toward function, reliability, longevity. They don't really care if there's scratches in the finish. As long as the firearm works when they issue it and works well, that's all they care about. On the commercial side of the business, obviously, we want the finishes to be beautiful. We want them to be evenly coated. We want no flash lines in any injection molded plastic parts. We want this thing to look like a brand new Cadillac. So that's been the biggest challenge, is just teaching them that part, because they're going on that military mindset. As far as the quality, reliability, longevity, they've got that part down. And so we had to work with them to show them. We had to basically give them boundaries of what's acceptable and what's not. So it took a little while to get that point across and get everybody educated. But, we finally got everybody on the same page with us. So, and I think our products show that now.
Jim, you've been over to Turkey and you've seen that culture. How do you think the culture affects the manufacturing industry and the products that comes out of it?
Well, I can honestly say that my trip to Turkey is the favorite trip that I've had as a gun writer. I did not know what to expect, and I loved everything about it. We went to Istanbul. We went to a manufacturing facility up near the Black Sea, and then we went down to the Antalya region, which is known as the Turkish Riviera. And Istanbul, it was Constantinople. There are pre-Roman ruins there. It's a vacation that I recommend to anybody. But in regards to the manufacturing, the manufacturing in Turkey, I mean, Turkey's a NATO ally. They're a first world country. They have their manufacturing facilities. They've got 3, 5, and 7 axis CNC machines. CNC machines don't know what country they're in. And one of the reasons why the guns coming out of Turkey are relatively inexpensive while just as well made is because they're being made on the same brand, the same kind of CNC machines that you'll find at Smith & Wesson or Ferrari, but the cost of living, the cost of manufacture is noticeably less in Turkey. And as a result, as long as you have good QC, that's one of the things that Gaines does, is he's practically lived over there off and on for the past few years, making sure that everything coming out of the machines is exactly the way U.S. consumers want it. Once you've got that, then people who haven't been paying attention in the last decade or so would be shocked at the excellent quality of guns that are coming out of Turkey at such an affordable price.
Gaines, now we painted you as an engineer, and I think in terms of you behind the drawing board, a drafting board, sketching things out. But we really need to introduce you to, as you're a shooter, you're a gun collector, you're a competitive shooter. I mean, tell us a little bit about your experience and how that helps you as an engineer in communicating to people that in Turkey, they don't necessarily have the gun rights we have. They don't have the opportunities to shoot as much as we do. How does your experience help connect the dots for those clients you work with?
Well, and like you said, they don't have the access to firearms personally like we do, and they have some, but it's limited. So not having experience with shooting in general, most of them don't, or not extensive amounts of shooting, not competition shooting, understanding the difference between a good functioning gun and a better functioning gun. They don't have that. They're not calibrated for that feel. Me, on the other hand, I started competitively shooting trap at 9 years of age, shot all the way through high school, then shot on the trap and skeet team at Tennessee Tech University. And then later got into a lot of the pistol matches, the IPSC matches and USPSA, and then later 3-gun. So for me, the guns that we're producing right now are very similar platforms to what I've used in competition for the last 15 to 20 years. I know how these guns should feel. I know how they should act. I know how they should perform. So when it comes down to, okay, here's the design, here's the drawings, here's the specs, and everything's in spec, but it's still not exactly quite right. When you go into the fine tuning part of that, that's what you got to teach.
Moving on a little bit, after we left Merzoff, we ended up flying to Beshir, the region in Turkey, where there are quite a number of manufacturers there. And we met with a number of brands there. One of my favorites, of course, was Tokarev. Can you tell us a little bit about the key players involved and how that company came to be? Because a lot of people associate the Tokarev name with the Soviet era firearms, such as the Tokarev TT-33 pistol and things of that nature. But now they're making different kind of guns.
Yeah. That company was originally Salvador Arms, and they were a sub-supplier to another supplier that we were using. And as time went on and we did more and more audits of that factory and we got talking to the ownership directly, we figured out that we could directly go to them and save a lot of cost on these firearms, basically cut out the middleman. They are the longest shotgun supplier that we've had. They were our first. And I've spent a lot of time in that factory personally, and they've moved from the original factory. You've seen the new one. You didn't see the old one. The old one was a cave, basically. I mean, there was actually a stump in the assembly area out in the middle where there was a guy sitting on a piece of firewood, and he was staking the ball detents that go with the spring in the ring on a pump shotgun, that locks down the magazine nut. He was doing that with a hammer and a staking punch with the tang of the barrel hood stobbed into this stump that's about 3 feet in diameter. I called that Methuselah's stump because I'm pretty sure Methuselah sat on that stump at some point a few thousand years ago. So they went from that mentality over a couple of years. They built a whole new state-of-the-art factory, of which you've seen. We spent a lot of time going through their processes, following simple automotive practices of getting manufacturing control, 5S, all those kinds of things, teaching that, breaking down the processes to where they made sense to minimize scrap, errors, and things like that. So it's been a gradual incline, but it's been a steep one over the years to bring them to where they are now. Now, Tokarev actually had a facility in Turkey, and I don't know the history of this, at some point. So that name was registered there, but they abandoned that many years ago. Well, they got searching. That name was available, and they actually bought the rights to the name, changed the factory from Salvador to Tokarev, and that's how we got to that.
Well, that's amazing. Now they're making a bunch of fun guns. Jim, have you seen some of their bullpup style shotguns and maybe their new TT-12 Pro model?
I have, and I wasn't aware of the background of the resurgence of the Tokarev name, so that was actually news to me. Actually, what I think we should do, maybe to the viewers and the listeners, is they might not have heard of SDS Arms, but you guys work with so many different manufacturers and import them under different names, they've probably heard of all of the companies that you're working with or importing guns under their names. Inglis, Tisas, USA. You've got the military armament stuff now. Tokarev, and I'm pretty
Spandau.
sure. Yeah, Spandau. That's another one, and I'm sure that I'm missing one or two in there. But basically, people, if you're seeing guns from those manufacturers in this country, they're being imported by SDS Arms and getting the full American attention to detail that the American consumer is looking for those products.
Right. And a lot of them are manufactured, like you said, in that Bashir region. And you had an apartment there in Konya.
Yeah.
Beautiful apartment on the sea. You got a big lake there, beautiful snow-capped mountains in the background.
Yeah.
A lot of history. And one thing I remember is there are so many Turkish flags, not just in the scenery, in the landscape. Every place you point your camera, there's a Turkish flag. But then you enter the offices of these gentlemen, and they're all on the walls. I've never seen so much pride in the nationalism of that.
There is. That's one thing that impresses me, because they are very proud, and flags are everywhere. Matter of fact, I even hang one off the porch rail at the house on holidays. So
that's awesome. So yes, after we did that, we also went to that industrial park, and that industrial park housed a number of different companies. And I was surprised that in Konya there were so many factories just adjacent to one another.
right.
Can you tell us a little bit about Ozerbash and Typhoon? And we visited a factory called Rexmex, which seemed a little bit new. It actually was started by a brother who runs a competing factory down the road, Crawl Arms, over there. So can you tell us a little bit about how the companies, do they work together? Are they in a competitive spirit?
They are competitive, but they do work together. There's a lot of cases where in the past, historically, Ozerbash, they're one of the better parts manufacturers. In other words, as far as following geometric tolerances, dimensions, and consistency part to part, they've been a large small parts supplier to a lot of the other companies in the region. And they also do some work in the medical industry, some parts for medical instruments. I don't know all those right off the top of my head. So they've got some capabilities that a lot of other facilities in that region don't have. They understand manufacturing control probably as good or better than anybody that I've walked into there. Needless to say, everybody wants to go there to get sweet parts. Now, of course, with them manufacturing our guns, we've cut a lot of them off.
Yeah.
So we kind of have control of that flow. So,
what are some of the firearms that they're producing for SDS Arms?
For us, they are producing our Mac 2 and Mac 1014. So, those are clones of very popular firearms that are available in the U.S. right now. That's all I'll say. We also have Spandau versions of the Mac 2 called the S2, which is the hunting version of the gun.
Right.
We did take some of the features that we put into the Mac 2, like the enlarged mag port opening, like we use in 3-gun, that makes the gun easier and faster to load. We are adding that to the hunting gun, and the oversized charging handle, things like that make the gun, more ergonomic, faster to load, faster to use. So
excellent.
They also produce the Inglis High Power for us.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about, hey, Jim, give us a little bit of school about the Inglis name, the brand.
Well, they were one of the original manufacturers of the high power. In fact, back in the day, even now, if you can get a true, authentic Inglis high power is worth a lot of money. And so people that have a grasp of history really like the fact that you can now once again buy an Inglis high power. I actually have one of those in for testing, and unfortunately I haven't had a chance to actually shoot it yet, but just looking at it and seeing that it has Inglis on the side of that P35 design is something that I really didn't think I was going to see in my lifetime.
Well, what I didn't expect to see is what SDS has done in speccing the high powers, you've got so many varieties of it. It's not, of course, you do offer more of that old school mil spec configuration, with the dull black finish and the black plastic grips. Also got one that's fully color case hardened with walnut grips on it.
Yeah, and they're absolutely beautiful.
What else can you do with a high power, Gaines?
Well, we've got something coming down the pipeline that I'm not really allowed to talk about yet, but it would be a modernized version of a high power. It would be something like if you were going to compare a 2011 to a 1911, for example.
Yep.
So that's going to be
exciting.
Debuting fairly soon.
And Jim, with the popularity of the 2011 style pistols going around, there's a lot of interest in double stack capacity firearms. Do you see the market, turning back to the high power platform again?
Well, absolutely. I think Springfield Armory saw that when they brought out their SA-35, and they were buried with orders because Browning just. I'm trying to think of a polite way to say this, but they totally missed the boat in not modernizing the design of the high power. And yes, there is a demand for old school high powers, but it only takes a little bit to really bump that gun up to modern aesthetics and performance. You just need use a 15 round magazine instead of a 13. Have a proper thumb safety that you can actually work with your thumb. Get rid of the magazine disconnect safety. Springfield did all of those, and I'm guessing this model that Gaines is talking about, because he is an avid competition shooter who knows what works on guns, has some, if not all, of those upgrades, and maybe even more. And I'm looking forward to that.
That would be a good guess.
I've carried a high power with all of those upgrades to my personal gun, and I would love to see some more of those in the market, because that's a great gun with the modern. I think Mekars makes the flush 15 round magazine, so you have a gun that is concealable, that's still basically full size, that has a great single action trigger that's concealable, and the darn thing shoots. It's a great shooter.
Yep, Sabati makes 15 rounds as well, and they're working on some extended mags like you would use in most pistol competitions. So, waiting on early samples of that for testing. So
let's take us to the next part of our trip, because it's been a really good guide to steer us through all these different factories. The next one that we visited, of course, we stopped through Rexmex and Crawl Arms, which there's not a real reason to talk too much about those. They're making products for other companies, but it was an interesting contrast to a brand new company that had brand new machines, more youthful executive leadership, versus a company that's been around for decades. And you could see that because it's like modern machines in a very older environment. Even saw a potbelly stove keeping the center of a room warm. So, it's an interesting how the Turkey manufacturing is evolving very quickly. And all these companies are kind of chasing each other. But who seems to be one of the companies leading Turkish manufacturing, and probably has been, is Hulu. Now, tell us a little bit about Hulu. And first thing I'm going to say about it is it's spelled Huglu. And Americans mispronounce that all the time because they want to pronounce
the G is silent.
The G is silent. So to properly say Hulu, it's just Hulu. And a lot of people are going to be familiar with Hulu from some of the CZ marketed shotguns that came for a long time. But now you guys are looking to work with them as well. Am I right, Gaines?
Correct. And you're right. The Hulu Corporation, and it's an interesting company platform because it is a cooperative. So there are something to the tune of 300 shareholders that collectively own the company. Now they do have a chairman and all that, a managing board, but it's a different type of, it's a co-op, like an agricultural co-op. It's very similar. And the interesting thing is the owners, the only way they get any funds from the company is they actually have to work a job there. So they're not just sitting back drawing off their shares. They have ownership, they have say-so, but they have to work for a living. So I think that gives them a drive that's a little bit different than a lot of other companies. I can't remember exactly what year Hulu was established, but they have been a long-term supplier to CZ, and they're fairly well known in the United States for shotguns.
Yes, absolutely.
So
they're in a beautiful setting too. May I say, they had one of the most beautiful and interesting buildings, one of the most advanced factories of all the ones that we visited. Plus, everything was lined in marble. And you start wondering, where are they getting all this marble? You look right outside, there's a
out of the hill.
they're cutting marble fresh right out of the hill, just miles down the road. It's amazing.
Marble's cheaper than wood in that area. It really is. That's why all the floors are marble, because it's cheap. They cut it directly off the hillside and bring it to town.
I noted they had 550 employees while we were there working 2 shifts, and 230 were professionals with engraving or woodworking skills.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what a diverse working population. The company was started in 1914, but Hulu Corporation was established in 1962. So to answer your question, there was a little bit about the background of that. But also in a town, was that Uzumlu that we ended up having lunch with that pizza? The best.
Yeah. That's Uzumlu. Yeah,
I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
Anyways, they don't, of course, being a Muslim culture, there wasn't a lot of pork available.
Mm.
And that's
when I was in Turkey, it was lamb every meal, lamb until I got sick of lamb. We were making lamb jokes, lamb burger helper, lamb kebabs. But that being said, it was the best food I've ever had on any trip. I'm in the Detroit area, and we have a really heavy Arabic population here, and so we have authentic food here, and I'm a big fan of it. And the food in Turkey was a lot like that, with a hint of Greek food, but it was basically Arabic food with a hint of Greek food, and it was great. Far superior to the potato and sausage heavy diet I got in Germany, which I'm not a big fan of.
Well, I'm going to pause a little bit here for a second in order to talk about food, because it's so much part of the culture, even in the manufacturing. When we were sitting around meetings, every 10 minutes, whether or not you finished your cup of tea or not, it was refreshed. And then every hour or so, we would have a small espresso-sized cup of coffee that had a very bean-like crumb at the bottom of the cup. And then you walk around the factory, there's big coffee machines or tea machines everywhere. Gaines, tell us a little bit about that. Is it that important to have that much caffeine in your body at all times?
It is.
Yeah. Is that where all good ideas come from?
Yeah, I normally drink about 35 glasses a day. So yeah.
Oh, plenty of restrooms there, thankfully, because there's yeah. And I got to say too, you had an interesting breakfast ritual, which, like it or not, we were all subject to. Games. You got us up in the morning. We went down the street. Tell us a little bit about that. I don't even remember what the soup was called.
Okay, so there is a small local-owned country cafe, and that's where I typically eat breakfast during the week. On the way to work. It's called Yusuf Usta, and so soup is a primary dish for breakfast for the Turkish people. They do have a large. It's called serpme kahvaltı. It means a breakfast spread where you've got eggs and breads and cheeses and cucumbers, tomatoes, and dates and olives, and you've got the whole spread that fills up the entire table. But that's not an everyday breakfast. The everyday breakfast is a bowl of soup. So typically your choices in the morning are mercimek, which is lentil soup, tavuk, which is chicken, or kelle which is my favorite. So kelle comes from beef, but it's made of scrap meat from the head and from the ankles. So it's very fatty. And it has this very delicious base that's just to die for. And of course, I love the Turkish crushed red hot pepper. So my ritual is when the soup comes to the table, it's very creamy looking. It kind of looks like your typical yellowish chicken soup. And by the time I get through adding the red pepper to it, mine is about the color of blood. So yeah, he's seen it. He's watched it. I load this thing down and stir it in, and I eat that hot soup first thing every morning, and I miss it so bad right now because I don't know how to make it. But
Oh, it was also interesting to carry on that topic of food, but going back to Tokarev, forgive me, what were the principals again who had us over for dinner? They were great guests.
Suleiman Alaboa and Faruk Tutal.
So they took us back to a guest house, I believe, with another outbuilding, and they had a wonderful barbecue. And
Yeah.
I love the communal, familial experience that was. We all took off our shoes. You didn't even have to ask. Walking into the building, and by the time you left, you had all friends, and they were offering, bring your family here, come stay with us.
Yeah.
It was such a welcoming environment. Are they that way to everybody, or was it just because?
Yeah, no. They really are. That is I don't know. That's the Turkish culture. They are the most polite and generous people that I have met anywhere in the world. And I've lived in several different countries throughout my career, all the way from Japan and Southeast Asia, Mexico, Germany. And I've never seen that culture anywhere else but there. Yeah. So.
And one thing they left me with, they said, hey, if you can dream it, we'll build it.
That's true.
So, all right.
If you can clearly show them what you want, they can make it.
Moving on in the trip, we then visited Akus. Akus Salah, Sanaya ve Tikaret Ash in Bashir, Konya. Did I get that right?
No. Okay.
But anyways, yeah, so going through Akus, that was a beautiful factory. If I'm not mistaken, tons of wood there. And the quality of wood lives up to the idea that you have Turkish walnut, right? That is what they mean.
Yeah.
Where does that wood come from? How do they source it all?
It comes from the southeastern part of the country, and I've not been in the area where the Turkish walnut trees grow. But evidently they're very old trees, so they're very mature. And it's like we've said, that's a dying resource. Eventually that'll be gone and there'll be no more. But right now, some of the wood that I've seen over there, even what we would consider grade 3, I would grade it at 4 and 4.5. It's just that beautiful a grain.
I remember seeing the racks of the wood, and some of them had number 5s written on them, grade 5s. But then they go up from there, and a lot of Americans don't even realize there's a better piece of wood than.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to believe, but they're blessed with a lot of beautiful wood, that's for sure.
Yes. So it stretched for probably 75 yards outside, under the elements, covered in tarps. It was just amazing. And then they had all these artisans crafting them, engraving. And of course, I saw more beautiful guns that I've never seen in the United States there in Turkey. And when I asked, why don't we see these in the United States? Why can't we get some of these high-end guns? Why is that, Gaines?
Well, the problem is they're limited on what they can manufacture a month because, the guns that Akus are making are, completely handmade. They do some CNC machining initially on the receivers, but after that, everything else is hand worked, hand fit, hand checkered, and so they can only produce a small amount of guns per month, and the demand is well beyond that. So it's kind of like we have to get in line here. There's not a fast turnaround.
Not too far away, you also had Akdash factory down the road, and that had a little bit more of a military feel to it in terms of their products. I mean, we saw grenade launchers there, a very cool pistol caliber carbine, if you will. We shot a select fire version of it. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What's coming?
Okay, so that's the Mac IX, and those are shipping right now currently. We've got a small number in of the first order that's already sold. I know we've got another, I think, 300 piece order coming, and I think it's going to leave next week. But what you've got there is it's kind of AR-esque to some extent because of the controls, the pistol grip. It's got the same ergonomics that you're used to if you're an AR fan in a PCC style gun. The big difference is we use the MP5 magazine to feed it with. And so that's the one thing that's different. Nowadays, everybody wants to, if they make a PCC, they want to have a Glock mag. We chose to do something different. Now, where that comes from is at one point in time, they made the MP5 for the Turkish Army. So they have, naturally, they have the tooling for the MP5 magazine. And so why not? And so they paired the two together. Now, it is not a delayed roller. It's just direct blowback. So it's a lot more simple to manufacture than, the MP5, MP5K platform. But it's a very reliable gun. So,
And if you're someone out there who really wants a delayed roller blowback gun, you look back to the Merzoff, right?
That's exactly right. We've got that too.
And of course, we can't not talk about the Spandau series of arms. You've got several shotguns in this line here. A lot of them are more towards the hunting market. Can you tell us a little bit about that category proposition with Spandau?
Sure. The big thing, we've got the over and unders. We've had limited numbers from Akus, also from Chelik, because we have a Premier series and we have a Field series. So Akus, they're the ones that provide the Premier. Chelik provides the Field. Quality of both guns, excellent. They fall under Spandau brand. We have been working on semi-automatic hunting guns for, duck hunting, dove hunting, turkey hunting, different lengths of barrels and all that. So that's the S2 platform, which is basically the identical internals to the Mac 2. No different. The only difference is we're offering hydro-dip camouflage. We're licensed in moss yoke patterns and real tree prep patterns. So we're not using a knockoff pattern that looks close. We are using licensed patterns and all that coming straight from Turkey, coated and ready to go. So those are starting to come in now. We've got a 20 gauge that we're just now starting to release in that same platform. So we've just gotten the first few samples in so far.
And another great event we had that night, we got visited by the military.
Yes, we did.
Having a big barbecue, but that was a blast.
Yes, we did.
I
walked away wearing a different patch than I wore into that night.
Yes, it was a camouflage Turkish flag on.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Oh, awesome!
Traded a guy with 4 stars on his shoulder.
Now, we can't not talk about SD Arms and not mention the importance that Tisas plays, and of course, they're on the Black Sea. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about their location, because their culture is almost completely different than what exists in Bashir, the Konya region.
It is.
Is their attitude to firearms different?
They're probably they've been into the pistol market for a lot longer than most of the newer ones in the Bashir region. So that's historically been the shotgun area, and everybody's wanting to move toward pistols just because pistol sales historically are a larger volume than shotgun. So where you will sell, I don't know what the ratio is these days, but 5 or 6 pistols to every 1 shotgun. So, everybody in the South sees the opportunities there, and they're new. Tisas has been doing this for quite a while. So they're a mature pistol manufacturing company. They also are a Turkish military supplier. So the new PX9 2.0 version we're coming out with is based upon the military issue PX9 that Tisas provides Turkish military. So they've been through the tender trials with their guns. Tender trials are very stringent. You're talking 30,000 round nonstop trials, and that tells me something. If you can take one of their handguns randomly right off of the manufacturing line, go 30,000 rounds according to the tender trial rules, and it survives it, that tells me they know what they're doing. So they were actually our oldest supplier. We started originally with Tisas. They're our biggest supplier. They're the largest amount of firearms that we sell annually. They've got probably, I want to guess, 70% of our total sales. So they are a key player and a key partner to us, in this industry.
You got to check out this new PX9 series, and what I love about it is your new one's got a comp on it.
Yeah, definitely, and it is really smooth. No muzzle flip, recoil's low. They made several minor improvements at the request of the Turkish military in the tender trials to produce the base that we're using for this gun. So now we've added everything that the commercial side wants, the comp and all that. So really sweet, really sweet gun. We think that one's going to be well received.
So what is the process? We've reviewed all the factories, all the products that comes over there. What's the process for these firearm shipments to come to the United States, make it into Knoxville, where SDS Arms is based out of, an American company? And tell us a little bit about what that's like to bring those guns in the United States, what the delays are that you experience.
Yeah, it's a complicated trail because first thing you've got to do is you've got to have approval from the U.S. side and also from the Turkish side. So approval to import and approval to export. So basically, you've got to file documentation with the ATF on this side, Form 6, in order to get a conditional approval. And once you do that, you send one firearm directly from the factory to ATF. They do their evaluation. They give you a really well detailed report all the way down to the markings and pictures. ATF does an excellent job reporting when they evaluate a gun. I have to give them that. Once we get the conditional approved, and then we go back and file Form 6, and that's for quantities. So, let's say you go ahead and file a Form 6 for 100,000, and then from there, they have to take the Form 6 from their side, depending upon if it's a shotgun or a rifle barrel. That's their two differences there. They don't really differentiate pistol and rifle. It's whether it's got a rifle barrel or smooth bore. So smooth bore, all of that's controlled by their local police department's approvals. So basically the Form 6, all the export documentation, and then from there, once you get an export permit and that's cleared, then you start the process of sending the guns in. If it's a rifle barrel, then it has to go to the Minister of Defense in Ankara. A little bit more detailed, takes a little bit more time to get approvals, may require additional documentation. But once you receive all those approvals, we use freight forwarders, most people do, and we have several different Turkish domestic freight forwarders who are partnered with U.S. forwarders. So then from there, we do all the planning with SDS US, which I'm actually SDS Turkey. We do all the planning with SDS US. We get the scheduled shipments weekly going out. We then go from there, depending upon whether it's going to be air freight, sea freight, because the handling is different, obviously, and the cost. Then we have our own warehouse and offices in Basia here where we can do consolidation in the sea shipments. Air shipments are a little bit easier because you can consolidate. Your freight forwarder will do the consolidation for you. And then that way you only have one invoice that goes with the shipment. Sea freight, you can only have one supplier. So that supplier is SDS Turkey. We buy directly from all of the companies that we're going to sea freight from. We consolidate the freight, we do the documentation, and then we send it on to the United States. So once it gets over by land or by sea, it goes through U.S. Customs and has to have approvals there, documentation that follows with that, customs clearance. That's what the U.S. partner side of the freight forwarder takes care of for us. Then from there, they arrange truck transportation to our facility in Knoxville.
So, Gaines, with all of that you just described, it sounds like a time-consuming process. How do you keep these firearms affordable and still keep SDS Arms in business?
Well, I spend a lot of time in these factories looking for cost savings in process, materials, anything that I can do that will improve quality. If I can reduce scrap, I'm saving money. Anything I can do to minimize handling of a product, that saves money. Anything we can do design-wise that speeds up manufacturing time, machining, welding, etc. So I spend a lot of time doing process improvements in these factories in order to keep these costs down to where they are. And at the same time, we're fighting a terrible economy in Turkey. The inflation is unfathomable to most Americans. People here do not understand what inflation is.
Well, tell us about that. Can you give us an example?
In the 4 years I've been there, the exchange rate between the Turkish lira and the US dollar has risen more than 400%. But at the same time, the Turkish minimum wage has raised more than 600%. Along with that, all of the prices that you pay for groceries, gasoline, diesel fuel, rent have just been on a vertical climb the whole time I've been there, and I've seen the prices go up. 2 or 3 years ago, to go to a restaurant and buy food was so cheap. It's still cheap compared to us as Americans looking at, what our prices are here, but it's not near as cheap as it was back then. Grocery items. I mean, we've watched cooking oil go up, 500% in cost. Imagine your every week grocery bill going up 5 to 10 times. And that's what they're living.
So, how important is the firearms business in the United States to the economy in Turkey, or even to a micro level to the Bashir region?
It's very important because you got to look at the numbers of people that are being employed by what we're buying. I mean, SDS is a small company, reasonably speaking, as far as numbers of employees. We've got low 30s total employment at SDS, including sales, engineering, product management, accounting, et cetera, et cetera. On the other hand, you have thousands of people that have jobs because of us in Turkey. So they depend on us for their livelihood. They really do. When you take 10 factories that have 200 to 400 people employed, who the majority of their manufacturing is dedicated to us, do the math. It's a lot of people.
Since you've been with SDS, what have you seen with America's demand for Turkish products and acceptance of firearms such as the Mac 5 series? I mean, really, that's where I really started to take note, was the demand and interest in these legacy firearm designs, such as you see in the Mac 5 and Mac 5K. What did you see being from on the inside?
I've definitely seen an increase of acceptance of the Turkish firearms. I know 5 years ago, everybody thought the Turkish firearms were junk, and it was just a lack of knowledge, basically. They see the kind of quality that we're producing. They see the fact that we have effectively a lifetime warranty on all our products. That should tell you something. We have enough confidence in the quality of the product that we're willing to offer a lifetime warranty. So, the other thing I've noticed, and I'm not a sales guy, I'm not a marketing guy, that's not my niche, but with the matches, the 3-gun matches that we sponsor, generally I'm shooting our guns. I'm shooting our pistols, I'm shooting our shotguns in the match. And, sometimes I shoot the PX9, sometimes I shoot the double stack platform, 1911. And those are guns similar to guns that people use in 3-gun. Okay. So 3-gunners are unlike most firearms enthusiasts. Everybody covets what everybody else has got. So I always carry extra ammunition to these matches and have little side matches and let the competitors can play with my guns and compare them to their originals that they might be just like. And they're like, wow, and this costs how much? And I tell them, it's like, yeah, why pay 4 times the price for the same thing? And what I find is after these matches, our sales go up on those items, because it's word of mouth and it spreads. So the big thing is now that people are getting experience with Turkish firearms and the quality of Turkish firearms, getting their hands on them, and that makes most people a believer. Once they get that experience, they're saying, "Hey, we were wrong. These firearms are as good as anything else, and we're not paying a fortune for them." So.
No. And I tell you what, I've tested and evaluated a lot of Turkish firearms from other companies besides those products that you bring in for SDS Arms. Gains, to a credit to yourself. I believe honestly that you and your colleagues, especially those full-time living in Turkey, are a big reason why your products stand above other Turkish products. And I believe almost the reputation that's associated with SDS Arms is benefiting other Turkish manufacturers incidentally. And a lot of that is a credit to you because of your critical eye, your background in competitive shooting, your knowledge of firearms, your engineering. I mean, you are the whole package. SDS Arms is lucky to have you, in my opinion. I'm telling you that. Thank you for taking the time to join us on this podcast and explaining a little bit about all of these brands that you deal with. I hope you'll come back soon.
Absolutely.
How do you say goodbye in Turkey?
For a situation like this, I'd say hadi görüşürüz. Means see you soon.